Hello, co-journeyers, and welcome back to The Truth So Help Me Good. I am your host, Barbara Landry, and together we continue to explore some of the bigger questions about this journey we call life, with inspiration from my upcoming memoir, The Truth So Help Me Good. Welcome to episode 23. I have been known to travel within the Netflix universe. This includes things like documentaries, cooking shows, recent declassification of UFO sightings by the government, and one that has been like an earworm in my head lately, the reality show Love is Blind. There is a Love is Blind series in several countries now, including Argentina, Brazil, Japan. And if you're not familiar with it, let me give you a brief overview. The premise is that single men and women agree to be part of an experiment to see if they can find a partner, fall in love, and get engaged without ever having set eyes on each other. Hence the title, Love is Blind. Is it possible to truly fall in love without seeing the other person? Once engaged, the couple finally meets, goes on a honeymoon, lives together, and then has a wedding where they decide if they actually want to get married or walk away forever. All of which occurs in 40 days. There is no question that the show is contrived, skewed by the production crew and editing, and the whole timeline just isn't practical for making a decision about something as important as marriage. But, all of that aside, there is something about the idea of falling in love with someone, or even just getting to know someone, without knowing what they look like, the color of their skin, or how tall they are. What happens when we get to know another person without any of the biases or judgments that we make based on how a person looks? And we all do it, don't we? I know I do. And in fact, I find myself doing it now more than ever. Mostly because I'm trying to determine, are you someone who thinks like me or not? Making snap judgments based on how someone appears to be. So, despite the criticisms one can make about Love is Blind, I have to tell you, I've seen magic happen in the pods. The pods are the little rooms where they date each other, separated by a wall. I have watched people make deep connections by asking questions, finding commonalities, showing empathy, being vulnerable, and on some level, experiencing love. I have even shed a tear witnessing this phenomenon more than once. So what is this? Why does it happen? How can two complete strangers experience a depth of feeling after just a few hours over several days in the pods, sight unseen? I think a lot of it has to do with eliminating the opportunity to make judgments based on what we see, and instead to look and listen with the eyes and ears of the heart, to ask questions and be vulnerable. I'll be honest, I am really struggling to refrain from making judgments about people based upon how they appear, judgments about their point of view, judgments about their beliefs, judgments about whether or not they may be a threat to me. So how can we use our hearts instead of our heads to better understand one another? I was recently in a middle school classroom in Nashville where my daughter Liza was facilitating a group of students in their exploration about Indigenous Peoples Heritage Month. Liza suggested to the students that they be curious about different Indigenous cultures. Her use of the word curiosity really intrigued me. To be curious reminds us that there is so much we do not know and connotes a willingness to learn. For example, we may know that as people we have different points of view about many things. We also have very different experiences. For us here in New England, we are having a very different experience than the cattle rancher in Wyoming, or the farmer in Kansas, or migrant workers in California. Each of our points of view arise out of our experiences. So how can we educate ourselves about other people's experiences? By being curious, by asking questions, by recognizing that we don't know what people have been through or what is most important to them, or what is it they need to provide for themselves and their families. Without our willingness to be curious and reach a deeper understanding of what others are experiencing, it is likely that we will misjudge people and make assumptions about them that are not true. This really resonates with me because as a young person, I was misjudged. My appearance and behaviors may have looked one way, but without an understanding of my circumstances, without an understanding of my experiences, it was impossible for anyone to truly understand me. In a chapter entitled "An Open Book," I wrote, and I quote, "We are told to never judge a book by its cover. It is actually a metaphorical phrase that stands for the idea that one should not assess the worth or value of something by its outward appearance alone. By the time I started 10th grade in the fall of 1972, my outward appearance had already begun to change. My long hair of the year before had been traded for a shoulder-length bob with bangs. My lean frame had been replaced by fuller thighs, a rounded bottom, and a muffin top that inched over my Lee corduroy pants. And the appearance of my face had been transmuted, with eyes deadened by self-medication and shame. I was a book, cast away on an empty shelf, my cover completely disconnected from my content, and unable to be understood unless or until every word had been read." End quote. Fortunately, there was a girl who later became my good friend. She was curious. She began to ask me questions. And through her curiosity, we got to know each other and then became inseparable. If she had not been curious and taken the time to learn about me and my situation, she, like so many others, would have judged me based on how I appeared without knowing why. When I discussed my idea for this topic with my son Jake, he reminded me that everyone is lovable. Everyone is loved by someone. It feels like such an important thing to remember, an important thing to be curious about. Keeping in our minds and hearts, what is it about you that I can discover that is lovable? I feel all the feelings of frustration, anger, fear, and uncertainty. When I act from those feelings, it does not feel good. When I come from a place of love, it is like balm for my soul. I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving and invite us all to be curious, to ask more questions and make less assumptions, and in so doing, to find deeper understanding and compassion for others and their experiences. I would like to close this episode with the following quote from Brené Brown. Choosing to be curious is choosing to be vulnerable because it requires us to surrender to uncertainty. It wasn't always a choice. We were born curious. But over time, we learned that curiosity, like vulnerability, can lead to hurt. As a result, we turn to self-protecting, choosing certainty over curiosity, armor over vulnerability, and knowing over learning. Thank you, co-journeyers, for listening. I look forward to being with you again soon. Take care and be well.